Good afternoon. I welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. Notice is hereby given of a workshop of the Board of Directors of the District to be held at 105 Port Road, Port Isabel, Texas on the 26th day of February 2020 at the hour of 4:30 p.m. for consideration of the business of the agenda below. This notice is posted at the office of the district on February 20, 2020 at 2 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code 551-041, 551-050. We do have the presence of a quorum. All members are present at this time. We may please, item 2, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation, yes?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and all its blessings. Keep us ever mindful of our responsibility to serve our community. Bless us with wisdom and guide us in our decisions so that we may be better stewards of your gifts. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Moving along to item 3, discuss the open meetings, Board of Directors' responsibility and duties. Please, thank you, Brian.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. The purpose of this presentation today, I've got a PowerPoint on the Open Meetings Act, is to go over the Open Meetings Act, the responsibilities that we have as a district under the Act. This fulfills the training requirement that board members are supposed to have for that. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the Board of Directors' responsibilities and duties with an aim at conflict, kind of keeping an eye on conflicts of interest, how to avoid that and what your duties are, because sometimes those things arise as well. This PowerPoint I put together comes pretty much from the Attorney General's website. If you need to review anything that I go over, that's a good place to look, or you can always just call me if you have any questions. But I'm going to go over it kind of quickly so that we have time to get to both things. Please feel free to interrupt me in the middle of it to ask questions. I do not mind. Okay, so the first thing, a meeting. The first question is, what is a meeting? It's a gathering, a quorum of the board where you deliberate about formal business or take action. Or it's an opportunity for the board to ask about, speak about, listen to information about public business. Sometimes they have things called staff briefings. And the reason that we're defining a meeting is what needs to be noticed. What do you need to provide notice to the public for if you're having a meeting? There's been some questions here. It was like, well, what if we go to the parade and we're all in a float? Can we all be in the same float? Yes, that's not a meeting. That's something that's a social function, a convention, a workshop. We all go up to training somewhere, a ceremonial event, even a press conference. Okay? Those things are things that you can go to, just, you know, as long as the purpose of it is not to sit there and talk about government business. I don't think anybody's going to get into any trouble if somebody like mentions something that has something to do with, you know, the water district. I don't think it's that strict. And we'll go over violations and what the violations, the possible penalties can be. They can be criminal when it comes, misdemeanors when it comes to the Open Meetings Act. So we got to be real careful about that stuff. Notice, when we post notice, I get a lot of questions all the time from different boards, like what's the correct language to put there, and this is kind of for everybody. Putting something like manager's report, that's not sufficient. You need more detail. And what you think about when you're posting notice to the public is, are you giving them enough notice as to what you're going to talk about? So if a member of the public is interested, they can come here and listen to it and participate and make a public comment if they need to. Personnel matters. Sometimes boards like just to list the term personnel matters. Is that enough? It depends. If you're talking about a specific employee, like the manager, that's something that the public probably has an interest in. You probably want to be a little bit more specific about it. If you're talking about a group, just a regular employee, or a group of them, or like a job description, you know, like canal riders or something like that, that's probably, you don't need to get into too many specifics to talk about specifically what you're talking about. But if you have a question about whether or not it's enough detail, it's always best to err on the side of including more detail. Public comment, you can just put public comments down there as part of the agenda, and you can leave it as general as that. If you don't have anything specific, you know somebody's going to come and talk about, and you can leave that open. And there's more about public comments which have recently come about that we'll get to later also. Where do you post it? You can't post it somewhere where it's all locked away and nobody can get to it. City Hall is good enough. And you also have to put it on your website, which we do, and that's a requirement now. Emergency meetings, this came up recently with us. You can do it in 2 hours notice. This has recently been amended too, and we'll talk about that at the end a little bit also. It's for an imminent threat to public health, safety, or reasonably unforeseen situation, example, a hurricane, okay? It's not to do, you can't do, this is like, you give 2 hours notice, post it, you have the meeting. It's like, for us, it probably is going to be a hurricane or something like that we have to do something for that.
And in that example, I'm sorry, it would require 2 hours?
2 hours,
Okay.
and then you can get together. It used to be 1 hour, I think it's 2 now. It can't be for something you forgot to do or to clean up something at a meeting. It's like, oops, we need to do that. We forgot to, vote on that or something. You can't do that. You have to do. If it can be done 72 hours later, you have a special meeting. If there's not proper notice, this is what happens. Everything at the meeting can be potentially void. A case example, they terminate, one entity terminated their director, okay, without proper notice, where they probably just put manager or something on there without talking about what they're going to talk about, to give the manager notice to show up and say, hey, I'd like this to be open session, so I'd like to talk about it. And they terminated them. The director got a job quickly after, but they still had to award 17 months of back pay, benefits, attorney's fees, because the termination was considered void because they didn't follow the Open Meetings Act on that one. If you make a mistake, we just renotice. You just renotice it and you fix it as soon as possible. Meeting locations, with us, it's always here, but the rules are it's accessible to the public, accessible for those with disabilities, located within the district's boundaries. The public's allowed to come in and record it all they want. We record ours and put them on the website, which is great. And when you, one of the new amendments or the new rules is that you have to allow for public comments on agenda items. It used to be that was optional, but now you can. You can impose reasonable limits on it, like the amount of time, but if they need a translator, you got to double it. But you can tell them like, look, you got 5 minutes to speak on this, as long as it's uniform and as long as you don't limit them as to what they can talk about. It's First Amendment, and this is government, and they can talk about any item they want. You can't tell them, hey, no talking about the bond or no talking about this. Yes, sir.
You said you can put a time limit, the chairman can put a time limit on
Right.
any one person?
Right, reasonable amount of time.
Okay.
Like if you have like 100 people who don't want to talk, it's probably a little different if you have one person who wants to talk, but it's reasonable is the standard.
And it's, the public comment period cannot be used as a question and answer session?
Right, you just listen.
Right.
You're under no obligation to answer, and you probably shouldn't because it'll just take forever.
Right.
And that's an opportunity for them to address the board, let their opinions and thoughts known on the topic that we've noticed. Closed sessions, okay. There's like 25 exceptions to the open meetings requirement, which allow you to go to executive. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm just going to talk about the ones that come up the most often, the 3 that do. Attorney consultation, that's for pending litigation, current litigation, or settlement negotiations. It isn't just any time you want to talk to your lawyer, right? Or, hey, I've got a question for the lawyer, let's go into executive. Not necessarily. It has to have to do with litigation or the settlement of something, whether it's gone into litigation or not, if it's a dispute. So that's the limit. That's when you can go into executive to talk to the attorney. Otherwise, it needs to be open. Other people have the right. Personnel matters. This is what I was talking about a little bit before. You can go in to executive to deliberate the employment, evaluation, reassignment, the duties, discipline, dismissal of an employee, or to hear a complaint against an officer or an employee. Okay, you can go into executive to do that. You protect their anonymity. But if the officer or employee, this is why you should notice it and put their name or their position so they know it's them. If they see, hey, I'm on the agenda and they're talking about me, they have a right to make that an open hearing. They can say, I'm sorry, I want to participate, I don't want you talking about me in closed session, but then it's an open hearing and everybody gets to hear it, but that's their right. This doesn't apply to like a class, like what I was talking about, if you're talking about, or an independent contractor. You cannot go into executive session to talk about like, you know, engineers or something like that. And real property, this is the third one that comes up a lot. If it's the purchase, lease, exchange, or value of real property, if the open meeting would have a detrimental effect on our negotiating ability, okay? It's not to invite third parties to come in and negotiate in private session. You can't do that. You know, in executive session, you can't like invite, you know, whoever it is you're negotiating with to come in and negotiate and do it there and keep it all closed. That's not the idea, because that, you know, the idea is that you're able to do it without it being disclosed to anybody else. That's a compromising position. If you're inviting them in, you're compromising your position.
You have to list what you're considering, the property you're considering, or you don't have to, like if it's purchase of a land, for instance.
Like, we can go into executive session to discuss our offers, right, or what we're willing to take, or.
Right.
And in that case, what he's saying, do you have to list the property?
You want to give enough notice so that if people are interested, they know you're talking about it. But it doesn't give them a right to come into your executive session unless you invite them in. But in which
Well,
case
one
it's not.
of the reasons I asked the question is because sometimes when you get too specific, all of a sudden the property in question just went up.
Mhm.
Right. You don't want to do anything to have a detrimental effect on your
Yeah.
negotiating position. So we'd use a common sense approach to that on a case-by-case basis. Okay. When you go to executive session, you have to state the part of the code that's allowing you to go into there, what the exception is. Final actions taken in open session when you come out. You can talk about it all you want, and you can have a pretty good idea what you're going to vote on, but when you come out, you vote. You guys do a good job with that. You have to record the meeting or have a certified agenda. Not all boards know this. You know, I think we record our meetings when you're in executive session, or you have to have a certified agenda where it just says the presiding officer announced the date and time, the subject matter, whether action was taken, and a certification that the agenda represents the meeting. Those are for boards that don't record. So that, because it's possible that a court may order you to produce what happened in the executive session. Some of it might be. Attorney consultation, probably not. That's probably privileged. Rare exceptions where they can get into what you're talking to about your attorney. Anything we do in closed session needs to be preserved for 2 years. If anybody, an employee or a board member, anybody, it's a Class B misdemeanor to disclose the agenda without a court order or the recording. So that's one of those things that you have to keep confidential. Who can attend in closed session? Only the directors have a right to be there. An employee may attend if it's necessary for the closed meeting, and it's not going to defeat the legal basis for the closed meeting. And you don't have to invite anybody whose presence you don't invite anybody whose presence would undermine the reason for the closed meeting. Like, for example, like what I just gave, the purpose for you being able to go into closed is to discuss, you know, real estate. You keep it confidential. You don't invite in a bunch of people that can destroy the confidentiality. Then it's really an open session.
In the event you miss an executive session and you want to be brought up to speed, are you allowed to be, first of all, and who's the appropriate personnel to bring you up to speed?
You could probably ask the manager. You could ask another board member what happened. I mean, you're not. I don't think that, as long as you're not disclosing it to the general public.
Yeah.
I think you're okay. You talk to somebody else who was there, I think they bring you up to speed. You could probably even watch the recording of it, but that's something I would have to look at.
Okay. Because I know Adam misses a lot, so it's more for him.
The other thing that's come up is teleconferencing. When we were going to have our meeting the other time, what can you do? You can use it. You can use a teleconference if it's an emergency, public necessity, or it's possible to meet the same location. That's if the video and the audio is working. You can have a board member attend. Your attorney, you can do a conference call with a telephone me if you needed to, if I wasn't here for some reason. That's okay.
But if it's one of us, we have to have video.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I think there may be exceptions. If it's an emergency, you could probably get on the phone. But I think it has to be an emergency. They also have a thing for online message boards. This doesn't really pertain to us because we don't have one. I don't know if we want one, but apparently some districts and things are very spread out and they can't get together all the time and they do their stuff on an online board. You can't, and they're allowed to, I mean, that's within the Open Meetings Act if you do it because it's out there for everybody to see, but you just can't vote or take formal action on those, and you have to archive it, and you have there are technical requirements for keeping the online messaging. If that were something we were ever to do, but we're kind of compact and don't seem to have a problem meeting here. Criminal penalties, I'm going to advise you of failing to keep the certified agenda, Class B, fine only. Unlawfully disclosing a certified agenda or recording, Class C, and civil penalties, fine only. If you hold or participate in an illegally closed meeting, like you close something that should be open and keep it secret from the public, that's a fine, and/or that could be a confinement, which is a misdemeanor that could lead you to go to jail. It would have to be pretty drastic circumstances. Circumventing the act by meeting.
I'm sorry. Elaborate on that one a little bit more. Holding or participating in a legal closed meeting. So we had an executive session, and unbeknownst to us, it was an illegal one.
Well, it's like we're going to have a closed session to discuss this, you know, this matter that the public, you know, had a right to see and hear about, and something happened in that closed session, and then court order says, let's see what happened in there. It was something nefarious and illegal. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to be illegal. It's illegal just to hold it. But what I'm saying is, for you to actually go to jail, I haven't done a case study as to what the actual penalties are for these things, but I would think it'd have to be something pretty serious. It's not like, oops, we went to executive session and talked about, you know, a little bit of this real estate that really maybe should have been in open, or about this class of employees when really it was a specific, you know, something minor like that. Another thing that this is called a walking quorum, where you call somebody, and then you call somebody, and that guy calls somebody, and that person calls somebody, and you essentially are doing a quorum without being together, but just through individual communications. That's circumventing the act by meeting members less than a quorum. That could be considered that, or if you know, that's something else that could lead to fine and confinement. You know, that's a more serious one. So basically, you don't try and get around the the Open Meetings Act by doing little tricks, because those are accounted for in the act and those are treated seriously. Civil remedies, a court can void an action taken. This is what, you know, if something happens wrong with the Open Meetings Act. Individuals could sue to prevent threatened actions in violation of the act also. So you could have a court case where you know, you're getting injunctions and people are suing to have actions voided, like what we talked about in that case earlier with the manager. Legislative updates, these are new ones. This is where the members of the public have the right now to address the board on any item. You can set your reasonable rules, including the time limit. Prior to this, public comments were optional. Emergency meetings. Okay, now it's only 1 hour notice, not 2. Before I said 2, it's now just 1. And they kind of defined what an emergency is. So, fire, flood, earthquake, hurricane, power failure, transportation failure, epidemic, civil disturbance, enemy attack, terrorism, things like that. You know, that's what they're talking about with an emergency meeting. If you can do it in 72 hours, you know, you should do it in a special meeting. All right. Okay. We've got plenty of time. Okay, that's the end of that part. Next, I want to talk about the handout you have in front of you. I think most of it is this one with the highlights on it. This is from the TRWA, which is the Texas Rural Water Association, which I'm a member of, and a lot of the water supply corporations. I think a lot of y'all know we represent a lot of water supply corporations. This is the sort of the lobbyist group or the organization within the state for those. But they give these guidelines as to what a director's duties should be, and I think it's really helpful because one, like it says up on the top, the purpose is for the membership, for us to be able to operate in an effective, efficient, and productive manner. And it also, if you follow these kind of guidelines, and these are guidelines from the TRWA with water supplies in mind, but it's the same principles, the same thing, same type of board, same responsibilities. If you do it this way, you insulate yourself from being accused of ethical violations or of ethical violations. So this is a good model to follow. And I've highlighted some areas in here, and I'm going to kind of go over mostly what the highlights are because I think that'll be most helpful to you. And conflicts of interest, that's what I was looking for. This helps you avoid the appearance of any kind of conflict of interest. Okay. So directors must not only support and assist with the goals, but they must ensure that their involvement in corporate business and activities in no way conflicts with or inhibits staff effectiveness, efficiency, or productivity. Number one, the corporation manager, we have a manager, serves at the direction of the board. He's not required to deal solely with one particular board member without direction from the board of directors to do so. And number two, and that doesn't include like if the board members come in and talk about his own water account. They go over that a bunch of times. The prime reason for a board member to be present at the corporate office is for official business at the direction of the board. Number three.
Hold on, I can't just come hang out with Carlos.
Dude, I want to come hang out with him.
You can come hang out with Carlos.
Like I drive the truck around, tell him how to do the job better.
Great question.
There's a lot of things that I've been thinking of telling.
And here's why you don't do that. Because the chain of command goes board to manager, and that's it. If you're going to employees, boy, I've seen this happen at places as big and bigger than this. Then you get employees going to board members with complaints, and your phone starts ringing. And instead of going to the manager or going to HR, okay. The other reason that it's a bad idea to come and hang out at the office and talk to the employees and try and get mixed up in it is you're going to get accused one day of pushing your own agenda. Well, this board member was in here telling this guy to do this and telling the engineer to do this and the manager to do this. I don't agree with him on that issue. Why isn't he in here doing that? That should be the board coming together. The board sets policies, report to the manager only, and then the manager goes out and does it. Then we evaluate the manager. Is he doing that right? But if you've got, because what you end up having is an employee who has now 6 bosses. And that's difficult. I think a lot of us have probably been in a position that kind of felt like that, where you're answering to the manager, but then you've got a board director, and you've got another board director, you've got another board director. Do I listen to the board director, or do I listen to the manager? And what if there's a conflict in what they're telling me? It doesn't work. And it causes complaints, and it causes conflicts of interest or accusations of that. And that's why it's a good idea to follow the chain of command. Same with the employees. You don't want all the employees running right up to the manager. They got to go to who's directly above them and it filters up. It's kind of like the patrol method.
Just to follow up on that, Brian.
Yeah.
So if there's inefficiencies in that process, is that something you put on the agenda and bring it to the board's attention?
Yes.
As an executive session item?
No. What do you mean? Like, I would have to know the example you're talking about.
Say I tell Carlos, I need you to take care of this, and Carlos never follows up with it.
Then that is something that would be an evaluation of the manager. But it would be, what you're telling Carlos needs to be taken care of would probably be something the board together set a policy on.
Okay.
And told Carlos, we need this done. And if Carlos isn't doing it, the board together needs to get together and decide what to do with it.
The whole point is that personal board members shouldn't be given directives to any of the staff.
That's correct.
Correct.
They should get directives from us here as a whole.
Right.
By vote.
Right.
And then they know what to do.
Otherwise, you've got, it's
So
just
then-
confusing.
So then if there's an issue, for instance, I have an issue with process, and if there's an issue with that process, I have to bring it as an agenda item to the board
Yes.
to discuss, and then we can make a decision as to
Yes.
how to move forward with it.
Exactly.
So, following up on that item, on item number 2, as a member of the, or unless as a member of the system who is pursuing individual membership issues.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
That means like if it's your membership, you can come to the office and say, hey, you guys shut off my water.
Or if it's
Your
a com-
individual issue.
Or if it's a
Okay,
company
pertaining
represents.
to
You.
my account,
Your account.
and that's it?
That's it. Otherwise, you don't have individual issues. You only have board issues.
Okay.
But if it's in a company that you represent, like,
Yeah.
we put in a lot of water meters in the company that I work for, so if it's relating to that, then going through the appropriate channels to follow up on a job or an installation or whatever. But if it's the timing of which they did it or something with the process that I wasn't pleased with or something like that, then I would bring that here, but hey, what do
If
you guys
it's
think about
possible to
looking at
get-
our process of getting our work orders out in the field quicker or whatever though?
Yeah.
Instead of just going directly to the employee and saying, this is the problem, we need to fix it, we come here, talk about it.
If it's day-to-day operations issues.
Not that I have that, I'm just trying to
Right,
create a
right.
hypothetical.
Yeah, I'm thinking through it. If you have a personal account and there's a problem with the water at your house, or you've got a business and there's a problem with the water at your business, I think you can call up and say, hey, but what you want to avoid is being like, hey, I'm the board member and I'm going to call them up and
Yeah.
I'm going to get them to do this, that's what you want.
Of course, and that can be perceived too, and you never
Right,
know that,
right.
just because it's a phone call from me.
Brian, can I add,
Yeah.
if, like a board member has a complaint about an issue or something, they can call customer service and ask them, can you check on my account for
Right.
this and that? Now, if customer service doesn't take care of it and he still has questions, he can go to the general manager and.
The general manager is the
Yeah.
person to go to.
That would be a next step that y'all can do and say, got an issue with customer service not following through, and then I'll look into it and,
Everything
Have to
should
take care
funnel
of it.
through Carlos.
yeah.
Okay, so
Everything-
that's the nature of my question,
Mhm.
with gallery, for example. And it's never, the water district did something wrong, it's always like, all right, I've got something I need to address over here and need your help on it. So who's the appropriate person to call? Is it always appropriate to call Carlos, or would it be better to call Minnie, or does it depend on the actual?
Yeah, if it's like a,
There's two different things here.
Customer service.
There's corporate, business, and your job as a board director. If it's anything as you as a board director, you definitely. If you're just a customer.
Just the customer.
You can call customer service, you can call Carlos. I would call Carlos.
Yeah, when I'm wearing that hat as a customer,
You're allowed to wear the
I need to
customer
put
hat.
in an order, or.
Right. What they're advising here is you can wear your customer hat. What we're trying to avoid
Wear
is
them both.
any kind of perception that you're you're getting your
Giving
way
direct-
because you're a board member. But I would avoid going to anybody unless it's like the number to call for customer service or call. All right. Okay, and like as it continues to say, we've already kind of jumped ahead on this. When it comes to also documentation or any kind of corporation documents, even a board member has to file for that under the Public Information Act. We still have all kinds of stuff back here. Another reason board members shouldn't be in the office, confidential stuff, that's maintained by the corporation in a confidential way, and you don't want to be accused of, hey, this guy's account is like this, and this guy's account, we need to do this to this. No. That's all public information that you need to do
So I basically come in this building, one of three things happen. A, there's a board meeting.
Mhm.
B, I've been directed by the board to come into this building.
Right.
Or C, it's my water.
That's
or my
right.
house. I'm a
That's
customer.
exactly right.
Those are the three reasons I'm in this building.
Or you're filing a public information act.
So then there are people.
Yeah,
Got it.
you can do that too. Okay, we already talked about 4. Number 5, under no conditions should a board member approach any staff member of the corporation to seek solutions to any corporate business issues unless it has first been addressed by the board of directors at a regular board meeting and the board member has been directed to take such action. So we kind of talked about that too. Number 7, the role of the board of directors is to set policy, ensure the financial well-being of the corporation, and support and assist staff with the goals of operating the system in an effective, efficient, and productive manner. It should not conflict with or inhibit staff effectiveness, efficiency, and productivity. And what I've seen in other boards, in the past, without getting specific, is complaints that board members are coming in and, talking to the staff or sitting down with people or asking questions and taking up their time when they've got other jobs to do. You know, they don't have time to do that. So that's become, that, I have seen that be an issue. I have seen that be an issue. Now, the next part is a little bit about conflict of interest, and we kind of move into this area. It's set in the Texas Business Organizations Codes. They cite in here to Chapter 67 of the Water Code, which is specifically water supply corporations, but these conflict things are all the same. A director has a conflict of interest if A, he or she is a party to a contract or transaction with the corporation. Pretty simple. B, an entity or organization for which he or she is a manager, official, or member, or for which he or she has financial interest as party to a contract. Okay? You're a developer and you're requesting services from the corporation. Okay? That happens a lot. He or she is an employee or immediate family member of a developer of property within the corporation, if you know certain degrees of consanguinity. He or she is serving as a consultant, engineer, attorney, manager, another professional capacity for a developer of the property. For example, I probably wouldn't be able to represent a developer, you know, who is building within here, or I'd have to get your permission to do that. So. He or she has other financial or special interests that may influence how the director would vote on a contract or transaction. Okay. And if you have a conflict, and we've had that, and that's normal when we're all important people in the community who've been elected to the board, sometimes
Very important.
pillars of the community that we have here before me. Sometimes you do, you know, your business runs into the water supply, you know, or into water. And if you have a conflict described in Section 8, you disclose the material facts of the relationship to the board, and leave it up to the disinterested members to decide the issue. If the contract or transaction is fair to the corporation, then it can be approved, and the minutes of the meeting state that the director made his disclosure and abstained. You know, we've done that before. That's the appropriate way to do it. And then down, I'll just go down to 12 officers of employment. No officer or director of the corporation should solicit or accept to agree to accept any appointment or any financial and or material benefit that might reasonably tend to influence their performance of their duties for the corporation, make any personal investment that might reasonably be expected to create a material conflict, or solicit or accept to agree to accept the financial benefit from another person or entity in exchange of performing duties as an officer. I've seen this before where somebody, you know, is a supplier or works for a supplier, is very close to a supplier, and then wants to run for the board. That's a potential conflict, right? So that's something that has to be taken into account. Confidential information, just be sure that when we talk about confidential information, you keep that to yourself. Use of corporation facilities, staff, equipment, and supplies. Directors and employees shall only use the corporation's facilities, staff, equipment, or supplies for purposes directly related to the corporation's business. So no getting the guys to go out there and dig a ditch in your yard, and, you know, hopping on one of the trucks and going downtown or something. You can't do that. And I have seen that happen, or at least accusations of that, where the crew was out there, you know, working on somebody's backyard. So. Can't make a loan to a director of the corporation. I think that's fairly obvious. You're not entitled to any kind of compensation except for actual and reasonable reimbursement for corporation business. And that's the end of my presentation, unless you all have any other questions.
I have a couple.
Sure.
What does it mean when you table something indefinitely? Does that mean that the person who took the action has to be the person to bring it back?
I don't think so.
Or can anybody bring it back?
I think you can, I don't think that you can take an action to say we're never going to talk about something ever again. So I think you can bring it back.
Anybody can bring it back, anytime?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the board should have, you know, I mean, if it becomes an issue that, you know, an item just keeps getting put back on the agenda that nobody wants to talk about anymore, we will cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm not sure exactly what the answer would be there. That would be.
Can any director put something on the agenda?
That's the other question. Generally, yes. You know, if a director, I've never had a situation where a director called up and said, hey, I'd really like to put this on the agenda, and it was like, we don't want to put this in. But if that starts happening, then we'd have to get together as a board and go over the policy for how we're going to put stuff on the agenda. But generally speaking, yeah, if you've got something valid, you know, business, normally when a director comes up with something like that, it's something that you should put on the agenda. Yeah.
Back to the tabling conversation. So my understanding is if something's tabled in a meeting, then the following meeting, it has to be discussed again. It's on the agenda the following meeting, correct? If it was tabled.
So it sounds like, yeah.
Previous meeting. If it was if there was no action taken, then it dies. Is that correct?
Yeah, for now. But, you know, issues can arise again.
I mean, you can always request that, but my understanding was we table something, then it automatically shows up on the next board meeting.
Yeah, the idea for tabling something is, oh, we'll deal with it next time. We don't have all the information. So we'll just
But if
do
we
it
take
next
no
time.
action on an item, then it just
Yeah, that's kind of like a decision we're not
dies
going to do
until someone brings
anything.
it back up.
Yeah, we've decided we're not going to do that. That's kind of what that involves.
And who has the final say-so on what you want to put on the agenda?
Generally, the general manager does, and that's what you
Okay.
put him in a position to do. I haven't read our exact policy or know if we have one. We could, if it became an issue like board members are wanting to put something on the agenda and the rest of the board members don't want it on there and the manager's in a bad spot, then we need to get together and workshop that out, and figure out what our policy's going to be.
And another thing, I am a vendor also for the district, so I do talk to personnel that order things from me. Is that an issue?
As
Do I
long,
have to disclose that in an affidavit or something?
I assume that everybody's aware of it and aware of the contracts, and you've disclosed it, and if any item comes up, as far as, you know, approving your contracts or anything like that, you would abstain, right? Or anything came up with whatever you're supplying to the, you know, and as long as the board has determined there's no issue with it, and, I think it's fine. And then as far as calling up to do daily business, I think that would be expected and reasonable for you to do.
And they, vice versa, they call me as well. And ask me,
Sure,
"Hey,
yeah.
can you supply this? or-
Yeah, you got another hat on right there.
Okay.
As long as you don't start using the other hat to try and, you know, use the weight of your director hat to get something, you know what I mean? But that's why you've got 4 other board members to make sure that they don't think that's.
So in that case, is it better, like if I am going to continue doing business with the district, to have a contract? Is it better to do that, or?
Well, I represent the district, so, as far as like what your contract with the district would be, I don't know. I mean, I can't advise you like how to negotiate with the district. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It might be good for you to have a contract, but I would be offering advice on that contract to the district. All right. Any other questions?
I presume we're supposed to sign this?
No, that's just a sample thing. You don't have to sign that. That's from the TRWA. That's just something I got off the thing.
Can I ask a question? Is there, like, being that we're a municipal utility district versus a water supply corporation, are there different rules or standards, or?
None of these are exactly rules or standards.
Okay.
There's, the government code the Texas Business Organizations Code does contain some things, and then the ethical, but these are basically, what I'm presenting today is best practices. Okay, and it's the same for a water supplies and liquor for us. The board makeup is the same, the structure is the same. This is how to keep yourself out of ethical violations or being accused of conflicts of interest. It's just the best way to do it.
I have a question. Is there such a thing as a board member duties policy or something
You
that
can
they
do that.
follow?
Yeah, you can actually get together and put one of the, that's what I'm saying. If we're having trouble, like, you know, it's like, hey, you know, what should be on the agenda or not, or, you know, if there's an issue, we should get together and come up with a policy. If we don't have one already.
I have a question. So for workshops like this that are going to stop about 20 minutes prior to the 72-hour announced board meeting we're going to have, right? We're essentially going to have to wait 20 minutes. What's a better way to schedule this? Like say that we might start on or before 5:30, or
You give
start
notice
at
of the
5
time so
o'clock?
the public knows when to show up.
So like, what if
So-
we told them this was going to, I mean, I know we can't do it this time, but like,
we're gonna have a workshop at 4:30, and then board meeting scheduled to start at 5, but may start later, or we gotta start right at that time?
I think you gotta start right at the time. so
You have
they
to
know
start
when
the
to be
schedule
here.
posted time. And it's hard to schedule the workshop
No, of
knowing
course,
what
yeah.
the
Right.
question and answer.
Well, next time, he's the only presenter we know is very efficient,
Yeah.
so it's only gonna be 30 minutes.
Are we finished with the workshop, or are we?
Yeah,
is there
that's
more
all
to
I
continue?
have. That's all I have. You can make a motion to adjourn the workshop if there are no other
Motion
questions.
to adjourn the workshop at 5:12 PM. Motion made by Mr. Avalos, seconded by Mr. Starkey. All those in favor?
Aye.
You are.